Hi, church. Thanks for having me. My name is Dr. Christopher King. Pastor Santiago, thanks for having me as well. So, by profession, I'm a doctor of chiropractic, and I'm also the author of the book that Pastor told you about. It's called Call Me Mom. It's a memoir about growing up with a transgender parent in a much different time than we live in today. It was the early 90s, late 2000s at that time, totally different world. Now, the talk is going to be focused on spiritual warfare. What that means is there are things that happen in an unseen realm that we cannot perceive, that happens, that affects us here in our perceived world. It's talked about through scripture over and over again. And so there is war being waged against us all the time, and we can't even perceive it. So that's what this talk is going to focus on. Now, when I refer to the Father and the Son, I'm going to use names that maybe you have not heard of. I'm not going to use titles like God or Lord. They do have names. The Father's name is Yahweh. That comes from Hebrew, Paleolithic Hebrew. That is his original name, and he is referred to as Yah in Exodus 3:14. This is what it says. And the Father said unto Moses, I am that I am. And he said, Thus shalt you say unto the children of Yasharel, which is Israel, I am hath sent me unto you. So I am in English, in Hebrew, is Yah. Yahweh means Yah brings life or adds breath. The Son's name is Yahusha. We usually refer to him as Jesus. But Yahusha, Yah means I am. Usha means brings salvation. So the Father's name is Yahweh, and the Son's name is Yahusha. So that's how I will be referring to him in this talk. We're going to start with one of my favorite verses. It's in John 8:32. It says, And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. From the beginning, Yahweh gave us free will, but established immovable boundaries that cannot be undone, no matter how free we think we are. Anything other than his natural order goes against the nature of Yahweh. So then we have to ask, what is freedom? Think about it. Maybe you have an answer. When I was in chiropractic school, in 2015, I went into chiropractic philosophy 2. And there was a question that professor had posed to my class. He asked us, what does freedom mean? Classmates raise their hand. Some people answer. He says, yeah, that's a great answer. And he nods in like philosophical confirmation. Yeah, good stuff. Once no one else's hands were raised, he gave what his definition is of freedom. He says that freedom is the ability to have a choice. Take away a person's choice, and you take away their freedom. I learned a lot of things in chiropractic school, and there are really only 3 that matter. But the most important was probably that sentence, because it laid the groundwork for the foundation for me to tell my story 10 years later. When I was 9 years old, my dad began his transition to female. I'm 37 now. My family, my father, and my life shifted in ways I did not choose. I had a lot of questions. Why is my dad telling me to call him mom? Why is my dad speaking differently? Why are there pictures of my dad as a woman all over his walls? Why is my dad showing up to my football games in women's clothes? These questions led me to something deeper, a battle against the truth, which we know as the Bible, and what my father was doing. We have to define truth. There are 2 types. There's truth with a lowercase t, which comes from man, culture, society, shaped by governments. Then there is the truth with a capital T, which is this. Okay? So there's 2 different kinds of truth. Now, these questions, again, led me to something deeper, a battle against the truth, capital T, and what my father was doing. I knew the truth, but back then, I just didn't know it as I do now, which is this. If freedom is the ability to choose, then we cannot choose correctly without knowing what is real. Well, how do we know what is real and what is not? If we leave it up to society, man, us, our concept of truth sits on a shaky and loose foundation at best. At worst, we have mayhem. Mayhem we already have, even with the truth in our hands. So in the late 90s, early 2000s, transgenderism was something no one talked about, wasn't in the news, wasn't in our faces on a daily basis. There were no support groups. Originally I'm from Fresno, California, and the landscape in California is very different than here in Texas. My family was forced to travel down a relatively unknown path, and the journey is still not over. My dad said he would kill himself if he didn't change. My brother, I have one sibling, he's 9 years older than I am. My brother said he would have killed our dad if he didn't leave. He moved 8 hours away. And my mother, understandably, was crushed and demoralized by circumstance. My parents were divorcing. I didn't know why, but I just knew my house was empty. I came home from school one day, and furniture was gone. Parents weren't home yet, so I just went about my kid business wondering where all the stuff was. And, I wasn't really given an answer. I didn't know why my dad was gone. I didn't know why he didn't come home. I didn't know why the house was empty. I was just kind of not told what was going on. And the process of learning about the driving factor of the divorce, my dad's transition, was slow, but it felt like it was all at once. It was kind of kept in the dark for me for most of the early, about 3 or 4 years into the process. And in the beginning, when I would go to his apartment, he would be my dad. Looked like my dad, sounded like my dad, he was my dad. But as time went on, his changes went from subtle to blatant. He would have fake fingernails like women get from the salon, and sometimes he'd be wearing a blonde wig. I don't really remember asking him about it. He never took the time to explain it, but I knew something was really off. In the hallways of where he lived, there would be a few pictures of headshots on the walls of a person who appeared to be a woman with poofy blonde hair, blue contacts, and a blue tank top. But the more I looked at those pictures, the more disturbing it felt. Eventually, I put it together, and I realized the pictures on his walls were him. And so I grew up with no male figure really in my life. And so I tried to search outside of my family to have role models. And I tried to play football when I was in 6th grade. And I really liked the coach. He was also my 6th grade teacher. He's a cool dude, went to the gym, worked out, fun guy, had a good time. So I kind of really leaned into him, and we got really close. And he was a bit of a role model. But I'd be at football practice, excited, pumped up, and that quickly turned to dread and embarrassment and humiliation because I'd be at football practice, and my dad, unannounced, would start showing up in women's clothes. And, I'm trying to play football with my buddies, but I can't because I'm just so focused on what my dad is doing. And it's embarrassing, it's humiliating. He's wearing a blonde wig, slacks, fake fingernails, and I didn't know that he was going to do that. And what I was focused on was, do my friends know? They see this person, do they know he's my dad? Do they know that that's a man dressed like a woman? These are the questions. So instead of focusing on football, I was focused on that. It really took away from a lot of things. Things escalated pretty much from that point on. He started to demand that I would call him mom, and I always refused. Would never do that because he's not my mom. And so that's been a major point of contention all the way through the years, even until now. That's still something he wants me to refer to him as, and I'm just not going to. But as a kid, I'd be scared that I'd see my friends while I was out with my, be at a grocery store or something, and I'd have to explain who he is. And that I wasn't with my mom, but I was with my dad, and I don't know why he's dressed like that. I was afraid of their questions that I would have to answer. When I didn't really have an answer because I didn't know why he was doing it. It wasn't explained to me at that point. And then one of those fears did come true. We had really close family friends. They were almost kind of like a set of second parents. And my dad and I were at Costco, and we were walking along, and we made eye contact. And they had known my dad since high school, but they had never seen him dressed in as a female. And so we're cruising around, and we stop and we see each other, and we make eye contact, and everybody just kind of freezes. And they knew who he was. They knew who I was with. But nobody really said anything, we just kind of moved on. I think my dad said hi, and we just kept it moving. I just remember, man, this is so embarrassing. These people know, and I just didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to handle it. I had to go to a lot of court-mediated sessions for custody issues, and so there was always a battle between trying to listen to my mom as she thought that she was protecting me, pretty much by bashing my dad and what he was doing. But then also, my dad trying to force his beliefs onto me, saying, hey, you need to call my mom, I'm a female, but not explaining, where any of that was coming from. And so I had to now go to these court sessions. I had to go to court therapy for almost a full year. And in the therapy sessions, the therapist wanted to try to create empathy for my dad and I, for us to have empathy for each other. And it didn't go well, because we both refused to understand what the other person was trying to say and what to do. And it was about the 7th session where the therapist knew we were not making any progress, so he had told my dad, I didn't know this, he had told my dad, just show up as a female, let's just rip the band-aid off, let's just get this movement, let's just get it going. And sometimes my mom would be there, my brother would be there, we'd all be there, or just be me and the therapist. But this time, it was all of us together. So my dad shows up, and nobody knew that this was going to happen. And so immediately, we sit down, and my brother gets up and just goes over and starts choking my dad, because he also had his own issues. He didn't know how to handle what was going on either. So the therapy session ended right there. What really affected me the most is that sometimes I would go to his friends' houses, and these friends, family dinners, parties, barbecues, whatever, and these friends knew him prior to his change, so they knew him as male. But when I'd be with them, they would refer to him, hey, your mom this, your mom that, how's your mom doing, what's going on here? And I remember just getting angry, because I didn't understand, were they doing that for his respect, or I didn't know why they were calling him something that they knew he wasn't. And I would imagine in my head, how about I just start calling you my dad in front of these people and show you what it feels like to be embarrassed. What do you mean, my mom? No, this is my dad. I know you guys know this is my dad. Why are you calling him my mom? I never did. I just kept it inside. So I thought what I was experiencing as a child was just people making decisions. But what I learned is there was and is spiritual warfare being waged against us at all times that counts on certain defeat to pull us away from the Father Yahweh. Now, I have always believed in this truth, but as I have come to Yahushua, I've learned that there is another realm outside of us we cannot perceive and directly affects us in this realm. Now, that does sound kind of like crazy stuff, but the Bible is filled with references to the spiritual realm and how it affects us here. We can start by looking at Ephesians 6:12. So it says, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. So this is not just a human issue, this is a spiritual battle over reality. So we need to define truth again. 2 types. Lowercase t truth is defined by man. What people say is real, what culture reinforces, and what you're told to accept. Then there is the truth as defined by the Father Yahweh. What actually is, what was created, and what does not change, ever. Now there are 2 claims about reality. We're going to start again with the verse that we started with at the beginning, in John 8:32. And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. My favorite verse is John 14:6. It says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So if we know these words as the truth, we can also know the truth with a lowercase t. We are told to believe by man will always be thrown in our face to pull us away from the Father and put as much distance between us and the truth as possible if we let it. There is the truth, lowercase, and then there is the truth. Truth, lowercase t, of man is subjective, emotional, changing. Uppercase t, truth, is fixed. It is the created natural order. It is unchanging, and it will never, ever change. We're going to go to Genesis right at the beginning, Genesis 1:27. So Yahweh created man in his own image. In the image of Yahweh, he created him. Male and female, he created them. In Mark 10:6, says a similar thing. But from the beginning of creation, Yahweh made them male and female. These scriptures are not interpretation, they're definition. In the Bible, this is just an observation I've made. In the Bible, demons are referred to as plural. They, them, we. They are not referred to as singular. While this is an observation, it is important to know who we're talking to when people say that's who they are, in my opinion. So in Mark 5, 8, 9, we're going to jump to Mark. Sorry, we're going kind of fast with the scriptures. For he said unto him, come out of the man, you unclean ruach, which means spirit or breath. And he asked him, what is your name? And he answered, saying, my name is Legion, for we are many. Now, this is not causation, but correlation. We must read scripture to discern for ourselves. No matter what, a man will always be a man, and a woman will always be a woman. What is insane to me is that sentence even has to be said. But in society, man, truth with a lowercase t, can convince you that a man is a woman and a woman is a man. We have far bigger problems to deal with. And we know spiritual warfare is growing more intense. The battle is and always has been spiritual because the realm we occupy is ruled over by the evil one. That is exactly what he wants, us at war with each other and removed from the Father. This is the tactic the enemy uses. The enemy is deceptive and tricky. The enemy does not destroy truth. He knows he can. He distorts it. He creates what is called cognitive dissonance. He gets people to believe something that is not true, even when it goes against their own belief system. Like they know it is true, but they choose to not believe it anyways. That's called cognitive dissonance. That's what he does. Believe in something to be true, even though it goes against what you know the truth to be. This is how we know the evil one is here. In Isaiah 14:12. Turn there real fast. Isaiah 14:12. It says, how you have fallen from heaven, Halel, son of the dawn. The evil one is referred to as the shiny one, the bright one, the morning star. Those names sound pretty safe to me, which is exactly how he draws us in. In Revelations 12:9, it says, and the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil, and Satan, which deceives the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Notice, they are angels, not demons. This is how he deceives and distorts. In 2 Corinthians 4:4, it does say, in whom the God, lowercase g, in whom the God of this world has blinded the minds of them which believe not. In Matthew 4:8-9, again the devil took him up into the exceeding high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and the glory of them. And he said unto him, all these things I will give you if you fall down and worship me. This is where the shiny one, the evil one, is trying to get Yahusha to follow him and not the Father. Satan offers all kingdoms of the world to Yahusha, and Yahusha does not dispute his authority to offer them. So he knows he can do it. He doesn't dispute it, but he doesn't. Satan has real authority and influence over our earthly systems. John 12:31, now shall the ruler of this world be cast out. Satan is explicitly called ruler, prince of this world. So we know he is here. We know he tries to rule over us. But if reality becomes negotiable, nothing is stable. If truth can't redefine man and woman, the foundation of reality collapses, taking choice with it. At some point, though, we have to put as much distance as we can in between us and those who seek to destroy the truth, because they won't stop. Now, there are many different ways my story could have turned out. And for a long time, I was like Luke from Star Wars. Have we all seen Star Wars? Okay, just making sure. If not, I know what you guys are going to be doing after church today. But there's a lot of movies. There's 9 of them, so strap in. It could be a long day. Anyways, my favorite Star Wars is Empire Strikes Back. That's the original second movie. Now, one of the most famous movie quotes of all time comes from Jedi Master Yoda. He says, fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. Now, there's a scene where Luke he's training with Master Yoda. He's learning how to use the Force. He's working out with the backpack on. Yoda's on his head. And, he's getting all strong and stuff. But Yoda takes Luke to a cave. And Luke is walking up towards the cave, and Yoda's hanging back, and he's sitting on a log. And once they approach the cave, Luke turns back, and he says, I feel cold. what's going on in there? It feels dark. And Yoda looks at him and he says, after Luke asks what's in there, Yoda says, only what you take with you. Yoda is teaching Luke to face his fears. And Luke goes into the cave, afraid of what he will face. Now, he faces Darth Vader, and who's a Jedi, Sith Lord, all-powerful type dude, and they battle. And Luke ends up smiting him. He takes down Darth Vader, and Vader falls on the ground, his mask is like half off, and Luke looks at him, and he sees his own face. It's not Darth Vader, it's him. He realizes he wasn't afraid of Vader, but afraid of himself because of what he had the possibility to become. He then has a vision of his friends being harmed. He's angry. He hastily ends his training with Master Yoda, and as one of the consequences, it still leaves anyways. Yoda tells him, if you leave now, you will destroy all for which they have fought. He leaves the planet that he's on, and he faces Vader again, for real this time. And Vader overpowers him, chops off his hand. It's very dramatic. And Luke suffered just how Master Yoda says he would when he was afraid. Now, this story may be fictional, but the same story originates from truth. It's in 1 Samuel 18. Saul and David start out as homies, good friends. Saul's happy because David takes down Goliath. But as their friendship kind of progresses, Saul starts to become fearful, angry, hateful, and he suffers a lot. Now, David they're fighting a battle, and they defeat the Philistines. And, so Saul goes from being happy that he takes down Goliath to changing. He kind of spirals out of control, and he starts to become extremely jealous of David and the praise that David received after defeating the Philistines. So in 1 Samuel 18:12, it says, and Saul was afraid of David because Yahweh was with him and was departed from Saul. As Saul loses faith and drifts away from the Father, he spirals out of control as the evil one sinks his claws into him. In 18:8, and Saul was very wroth, and the saying displeased him. And he said, they have ascribed unto David 10,000 kills, and to me they have ascribed but thousands. And what can he have more but the kingdom? Saul is becoming increasingly angry and jealous of David because David is receiving more praise than he is, and it starts to eat at him. Then we go to 18:11. It says, and Saul cast the javelin, for he said, I will smite David even to the wall with it. So he wants to kill David. From here, Saul continues to lose his faith. Saul becomes afraid of David because Yahweh is with David, but has departed from Saul. But the truth is, it's not that Yahweh left Saul, it's that Saul left Yahweh. Things get worse and worse for Saul, to the point where he loses total control of his mind. But reality didn't change. The serpent, the evil one, finally wraps around and constricts Saul so tightly that Saul does end up falling on his own sword, and he dies. Again, reality didn't change, but Saul's perception of it did. The enemy didn't need to change David, he just needed to convince Saul that David was more important than him. The fear crept in, and Lucifer seized his opportunity. Yoda summarized it like this. Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. Luke thought his battle was out there, but his real battle was what was happening inside of him. Scripture shows it like this: fear, disobedience, distortion, and destruction. Saul thinks David is the problem, but the real battle is internal and spiritual. I knew it as Yoda had put it. When I was about 20 years old, my dad said all the time that he didn't think he was going to make it past the age of 50 because his father had 4 heart attacks, died on the 4th one. I think he was 49. I never met him. And then his mother died of lung cancer like a year later. So my dad thought he was going to die early, and he made it past 50. But he ended up having 2 heart attacks, but he's still alive. Now, I don't remember if it was the first or the second one that he had, but he was at his friend's house, just hanging out on the couch, and he has this heart attack, gets to the hospital, he's fine. But At some point, he called me to tell me what had happened. Because it took, I don't know how long it took before I finally find out. But he calls me, tells me what happened, and I told him he deserved it. And I meant it. At that point, the fear had never left, the anger had built up, the hatred overcame, and the suffering dragged me down. My anger had reached a boiling point and could no longer be contained. He destroyed our family, he dragged me through the court system, he humiliated me in front of my friends, he was an embarrassment, he is the reason I had to go through all of this, he is the reason I'm broken, he is the reason I'm lost, he is the reason I did drugs, he is the reason my brother left, he is the reason my mom can't keep it together, he is the reason I have all these messed up views of relationships riddled with failure. He is the reason. Master Yoda famously once said, fear is the path of the dark side. Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. Fear, anger, hate, and suffering were what I carried into the cave with me. I was afraid to lose my dad. If I agreed to call him anything except Dad, that meant he was gone. I was angry he no longer wanted to be my dad. I hated my dad for destroying our family, and I suffered just how Master Yoda said I would. And the dark side came out when I told my dad that he deserved that heart attack. Whether it's Saul, whether it's Luke, or whether it's our own life, the pattern is the same. When fear replaces truth, everything that follows leads to destruction. Earth may be where the devil dwells, but always remember the scripture in Matthew 5:34. But I say unto you, swear not falsely, neither by heaven, for it is Elohim's throne, nor by the earth, for it is his footstool. What this means is that the devil has to rely on his tricks and his power to deceive, but he is always under the feet of the Father. Because earth is his footstool, the devil is here with us, that means he is always under the Father. Always. In John 14:6, again, it says, Yahushua said unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes unto the Father but by me. In closing, the Shining One will do everything he can to pull us away from the truth, the true light. But in John 8:32, it says, and you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Thank you for listening.